Hi everybody. Really thought hard about how I want to do this, and I'm going to try to break it down and organize it as much as I possibly can. Right now, we're going to go through a little section on how to strip a 1957 Corvette, or at least how I say you should. I know a lot of people have used chemicals on these old cars. And what I have found in the past is that when I use chemicals on these old cars, and it wasn't me doing this stuff, it was me having employees do this stuff, that sometimes if you don't properly clean the surface, and it is difficult once you put those kind of chemicals on a very porous surface, like this old-fashioned fiberglass, that you can get bubbling later on, years later on. And because this is a restoration and this customer is going to have this car for a very, very long time, I always like to lean on the safe side. So we are going to go through the process of stripping the paint on this car. And this is an original paint car, so there's not a lot of paint on this car. And maybe I would think about that differently if I had multiple paint jobs that I needed to take off. But for right now, and I have stripped a lot of this car already, but we left this fender kind of intact so that we could go through the process using the tools that we have. And we're going to use Sunmight sandpaper. We're going to use Sunmight electric tools. And then we're going to use a Sunmight vacuum system. And I want to show you these things. These are really neat tools. They'll keep the environment clean, keep your nose clean, and just strip off the paint a lot faster because of the vacuum system. The sandpaper is very special. It's a mesh sandpaper. We're using 80 grit mesh sandpaper, and it just buzzes it down very, very fast. Actually, I wouldn't want to buzz it any faster than what I'm doing right now. So you do have to still be careful, but not as careful as if you were grinding it with 36 grit or something coarser. So I think we've got a good program going. We've already stripped the other side of the car off camera, and now we're going to strip this side, and then when you come back to the next video, we'll talk about all the other things. So I'll take some pictures of the tools now and show you exactly what we're going to be using. All right, so this is the Sunmight vacuum system. It's very nice. It all comes intact. Everything is, encased. And I'm going to put plenty of references on where and who you can call if you're interested in this. And I would say, even for a home hobbyist, this would be the way to go. If you don't want the excess dust in your shop, this thing really works great. This is the DA. It looks a lot like our air-powered DAs. Obviously, it's got, speed controls there, and then you hit that button. The vacuum is hooked up right to the tool, and it's electric. The nice thing about using electric tools, especially in our shop, we don't have the super big screw compressors in this shop. Right now, we're just kind of resetting this shop up. It's a very, very old shop, kind of fun to work in, but it uses, I think we've got a 10-horse air compressor, so it's big enough for the spray booth and for one or two guys working in there. But when you're using a tool like this, it really sucks the air from an air compressor. So if you can go electric, this tool is super light. It's a very lightweight tool. The sandpaper is this mesh sandpaper. Obviously, there's holes underneath this so it vacuums the dust up, and I'll pull the sandpaper so you can see. The vacuum system, let me turn the vacuum on here. The vacuum system is regulated, so that's on max, and then you can turn it down and regulate it. And then you can go to automatic too. So I think when you're using the air tools, you can go into automatic mode so this is the backing plate. It's got lots of holes, so it does a lot of sucking of the dust coming through that mesh sandpaper. And like I said, it was 80 grit sandpaper. You can see through the sandpaper. And this sandpaper feels really hard and sharp, and we've actually used this one quite a bit, and it still feels very sharp. It's got a lot of tooth on it. So it's just a good economical way to strip paint from the car. So we've got the vacuum on, it's attached to the tool, and we're going to get started doing some stripping on the paint so you can see how clean it stays and how fast this mesh sandpaper strips the surface off. So just like I was saying that the other side of this car, I did not find any multiple paint jobs. But as soon as I touched this fender, only in this section, up on this section, I've got red primer and I've got the blue color. But right here, as soon as I dug in, I could see that it had been repaired right here. It looks like somebody had painted it with the exact same color. This is the original fiberglass. This looks like a gray primer, which would say to me that it had been repaired, because the red oxide primer seems to be the standard color primer across this whole car. So somebody had done some work here. There's no plastic filler or anything, but we've got maybe some lacquer primer with an additional paint job on this section right here. It still came off pretty fast. I'm going to change my sandpaper and do another section and see how much faster that might strip off of there. So I've got a new piece of sandpaper, and when I feel the new piece of sandpaper, even though I did feel this one and it felt like it had a lot of tooth on it, boy, this really has a lot of tooth on it. So let's change that out. Super simple, everything's Velcro. And we're using 6-inch tools. I know back east, a lot of guys use 5-inch DAs, but out here in California, it seems to be, everybody just got used to using 6-inch DAs. So we all have 6-inch tools out here. But the sandpaper's available in 5 or 6-inch. So we turn the vacuum on. Let's see how fast it strips this time on a fresh section. Okay, And while that camera is rolling, just so I can show you a couple things with my phone, just some detail shots here on the repair that somebody had done in this section. So I'm starting the camera now. All right, you can see the gray primer right here. And this section down here is unrepaired. This is the red oxide primer and the original paint here. But here, you know, just like what happens a lot of times in body shops, is they get real aggressive with the tools. You can see where they did the repair. Whatever, I'm sure I'm going to find something in here. The damage, yeah, there's a lot more gray primer here, because when I come over here, there's no more gray primer. So something happened on the top of this fender here, and somebody sprayed some gray primer up there. We're going to take all that off, but you can see the grinding marks that they put in here, and all of those things will cause shrinkage later, or at least with old-fashioned primers, you know, lacquer type primers that this car was obviously painted with. They definitely didn't have acrylic enamels at the time that this car was painted in 1957, but the lacquer was probably what they used on this car. And because of the amount of solvent that is in lacquer, it would shrink quite a bit. Obviously, you can see the cracking that's going on this car. The rest of the body doesn't look too bad, and we're going to talk about that once we get all this paint stripped off. Before you go to primer, you have to make sure that there's no surface cracks in this body. I noticed up here around the headlights, you know, somebody had done some work up here. A lot of this, all that primitive work inside there, that's factory. But here, we've got some cracks around, and it's so fragile. Everything is really, really fragile. So we got to be careful, you know, when we go back to prepping this. Yeah, this one's all blown out on the edge here, and we'll have to fix all that. But this kind of stuff is just lacquer checking, blowing off the fiberglass. So we're going to wipe this car down with acetone, and the acetone should show us any of the surface cracks in the body. And we'll talk about that when we get there. But right now, we're going to get busy with stripping the paint completely, and I'm going to go to the other camera now. So just to close up this video, I got started with doing the top of this fender, and it was really pretty easy. I went through 5 of these discs. Maybe you could have worked them a little bit further, but I felt like it was starting to, you know, I was having to push pretty hard. So, you know, I just burned another one, just making sure that I was doing it efficiently. But I'm not very dusty. I don't know what my face looks like, but I'll look at that before I post this video. I didn't wear a mask, and that is something that you should think about. But there really wasn't much dust, and I haven't even wiped this off yet. But this only took an hour. I did this whole area in 1 hour. So give you some idea of what it's going to take the guys to do this whole entire car. And it's safe. This fender had a lot of repair work on it. There's a big repair right here. You've got some Bondo right in here on the bond seam. This area right there looks like some bad fiberglass work. We're going to take all that out, and then some primer. Maybe this primer is something like a polyester. I can't tell. But I do remember that the old-fashioned lacquer sand pretty hard too. So this was all done around the bond seam. It doesn't look like it really needs a lot. We're going to use all urethane and epoxies on this when we get into the refinish side. So obviously the materials have come a long ways since this car was painted way back when. And you know, I thought that this was an original 56, 57 Corvette, but it does look like it had some work done on it here. But I wanted to give you real time, 1 hour, 5 discs. So just so that you can add it up, if you're going to consider stripping by hand. Again, the reason why on this fiberglass, it's very porous. There are a ton of cracks right up here on the top of this fender. So any one of those cracks, if you get stripper down inside there, it's really, really hard to make sure you dig it all out. So I don't want the contamination. I don't want to deal with the, getting the chemicals down inside the fiberglass and then having to wait, a year from now and seeing a bunch of bubbles on this car. I would rather just do it safely. If this takes an hour, this is going to take, half an hour, then the rocker panel is going to take another hour, then, you can pretty much judge how long this whole car is going to take to strip. I don't know how we're going to do the door jambs yet. Those are a little tricky. I do have 3-inch tools, and Sunmight makes a 3-inch little sander, maybe even a grinder with a 8-inch or 80 grit disc might work really well inside there. But we'll see how that works, and we'll talk about that in the next video. So this is it for this video. This whole car is going to be stripped the next time you see it, and then we'll get started with the body work and then on to using the refinish products. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I have a hard time believing I'm 64 years old, but I'm one of the old dogs. My buddy John hooked me up, John Sutton, and his name will be up, it'll probably be right about here on the video, on how to get a hold of anything Sunmight, sandpaper, tools, equipment, like this vacuum system, super slick. You saw me do the intro for this tool, and then I talked all about how we're going to do all this stuff and how fast it was, 1 hour to get this far. But then I called John and I asked him how to hook up the auto mode, because there's an auto mode on the vacuum cleaner that when you turn the vacuum, or when you turn the tool on, the vacuum comes on. Now the vacuum comes on. So because I had it plugged into the wrong place. So now that it's plugged into the right place, I just want everybody to know some of the features on this really, really neat tool. So let's see how that works. The vacuum instantly comes on. There's no dust. Now, if I disconnect the vacuum over there, you'll see how much more dust there is. Now we look like a normal body shop. So it does really work to have that vacuum system. So I just wanted to show you something slick about this tool and this whole system when you do it right. I'm learning too. These are new tools to me. We never had anything like this in the body shop. When I came home after DAing at my dad's shop all day, it was a dust bowl. I mean, just walk into my mom and dad's house and have to take a shower immediately. But I really didn't see much dust at all when I was using the vacuum system. And now that we have it hooked up on auto mode, it's just nicer. So I just wanted to show you that, make a little note, and I'll probably put this up in the beginning that, I didn't quite get it right when I introduced you to this tool. All right, everybody. See you later. Bye.